A long time ago, I tried to do an experiment. Well, I started one, I didn't finish it, where I took apart a VHS VCR and modified it to where it didn't pay attention to the video head being there, and tried to make it into a multi-track, and also wondered if I could actually make the audio recording work well because I wanted to use it for audio only. Now, I'm going to give you some information about VHS recorders and others, but first we're going to talk about how fast the tape goes past the recording and playback heads. For those of you who don't know, imagine the wave shape of you hitting a note to be this big, and we'll center it right on the screen here. Make it this big. Now, let's scale that down and make it really small like that. Now, if you take that wave shape, it'll have a low frequency and a low intensity. Now, in order to magnetize the tape, you actually put across the magnetic tape a very high frequency and a higher intensity. It's not whatever the maximum is, it's a certain limited amount. And it puts it in this range where if you vary it a little bit, that high frequency, and maybe even a low frequency, would actually get a magnetic field recorded, but you have to really blast away at it. Now, this is called bias for a reason. You take that signal intensity, which goes up and down a big distance like this, and it's going to pulse this way and then pulse the opposite way, forcing the magnetic field to be overdriven enough that it actually records what you put over it. And depending on how intense it is, you'll record over the other recording and erase it, or mix them. Now, this width, we'll call that the bias amplitude. Now, you might think that you just make it stronger or weaker to make an audio recording, or maybe some other combination. But what you do is, instead, let's say here's your wave shape of your voice, you take this bias signal that's this big, and here's your audio signal, and you move the whole bias up and down. You use the audio signal to bias this frequency. It's a much higher frequency, but it causes it to make a magnetic field that's high, and another one that's the opposite direction that's high. And when you shift it up and down in time with your voice, or the wave shape, it does that biasing and recording, and this has the effect of summing up being these two intensities. When it goes past the head to play later, it just looks like it's going up and down this amount. That's how it's done, partially. It's an oversimplification, and I'm not going to go into details. But part of the quality, the audio quality you get out of a recording, is how fast the tape goes by. So I'm going to list a few of them, and we're just going to go from there. Half-inch VHS tape has one synchronization track, 2 audio channels, or one, and 1 NTSC video recording. The video recording is recorded by, here's the strip of tape, running copies of each line or frame across it, recording in an insanely high frequency. And also, if you're not aware of it, later on, mixing audio with it by just making it like an FM radio station and pressed across it, because you can. Videotape has to record video, and video is at 3 megahertz. Audio recording is only 10 kHz. If you are using FM, you can squeeze it down. If you give it more bandwidth and record, you can record stereo. So that's done by changing the frequency in time with the audio. But anyway, now at minimum tape thickness, this can hold up 240 minutes or 4 hours of standard speed, near CD quality FM interleaving stereo audio. But the tape itself, the audio recording track, you normally don't hear if you have a high quality one. It doesn't even bother with it. It has a audio quality lower than cassette. That's why you use the hi-fi. And it works out as 1 millimeter and 0.7 millimeter wide pathways for the audio channels and the synchronization hum that goes. Now, it goes by at 1.3 inches per second at standard speed, and at the others it goes even slower. So the audio quality is pretty bad. Now, if you do it imprinted into the video like you do when you do it, you actually get almost CD quality. Now, what else runs at that speed? Well, here we go. What about quarter-inch audio tape? Consumer grade stuff. You know, like reel-to-reel tapes, really high quality. They go at 3.75 inches per second minimum. They actually go faster than that most of the time. That's the lowest speed. That's consumer grade, garbage grade. the kind you get from the store in the old days, which we don't do anymore. And it's a little bit less than a quarter-inch wide, 4-track recording, with each track being 1.1 millimeters wide or whatever. But it also comes in quarter-inch, half, 1-inch, and 2-inch wide formats for multi-track recording. Hence the reason I was thinking of videotape, because videotape is half-inch wide. Okay. But that only gives you 8 tracks if you use half-inch wide audio recording tape, and that's at 3.75 inches per second instead of VHS going at 1.13, much slower. 8-track. 8-track recording tapes, the kind you used to have in a car, you'd shove it in, that's also quarter-inch wide tape. And it's run past the heads at the same 3.75 inches per second. They go up to 90 minutes, just like audio cassette tapes. Well, I'm sure audio cassette tapes are good, right? Well, audio cassette tapes are a little bit different. They go by at 1.8 inches per second. That's just a little bit better than the VHS. VHS recording, for all that surface area, for the fact that you can record 3 million bits of data a second, is going by at a lousier speed than your audio cassette recorder. In fact, it's almost the same thing as a microcassette recorder or so. Now, audio cassettes are, called 1/8-inch wide, and they can carry 4 tracks. The quarter-inch wide recordings that are used for standard reel-to-reel tapes also do 4 tracks. But 8-track recording is quarter-inch tape with the recording head capable of recording higher density. The tracks themselves are about 0.02 inches wide and are 0.01 inches apart. Now, this is the weird thing. There's something called a quadraphonic 8-track head that you can get a hold of. I've had them in my hands a couple of times fixing tape decks, where they have 4 of the 8 tracks done this way, and if you get another one and put it next to it and interleave them like that, you don't have to have them move them up and down. In the old days, the head would actually move up and down the track. They can be set just a little bit offset and put into not just the place for the tape head, but the place where they have the little detector where the tape went over. You can just set it there and just leave all 8 tracks recordable or playable. You can use the same head to record and play. And yes, you can stick a magnet in line. Now, the 8-track tape recordings, again, are moving past much better speed than you get out of a cassette player. But they use an antiquated method where the tape is on a continuous infinite loop, where it pulls from the center of the spool, which causes the outside edge to kind of spin up, and then spit it over this way and do it as a take-up reel thing. They eventually get stretched. It's very bad for the tape. And it's kind of sad because 8-track tapes have, as consumer-grade recordings go, had the potential for higher quality sound. The major limitations are the quality of the materials. A lot of them were bad. Second one is the heads need to have properly engineered heads. They usually were pretty well made. And yes, I have made one of those quadraphonic tape head stacks, but I put it on the video recording tape thing, and the experiment just fell apart from there. And yeah, I made it to where it would work as nothing but a multi-track, which means I had a half-inch wide data track, which means I could have done 16-track on a half-inch wide. The equivalent to a $400 or $500 audio recording head could have been done that way, and I could have done it through a VHS deck. So the trick here, if you're curious, I've got all the information below in the video, is to basically just get a standard reel-to-reel deck and put a higher density recording head on, so you can do 8 tracks. Most recordings that are done by people doing multi-track recording for a movie, or, well, actually for doing an album, are 4-track. Bass, lead, the voice, and drums. Maybe a keyboard with you recording. And that'll work on a 4-track. 8-track would let you do stereo effects and or record more instruments. And you can also, if you start off with an 8-track head group, which I have links below and you can buy them. They're just, it's hit and miss to find them. You end up with the ability to record the audio and play the audio and mix it off of what would be the equivalent to like an 8-track tape, but using a reel-to-reel deck that normally with 8 tracks would be an expensive, very expensive head. Something on the order of $120. So if you find a quadraphonic 8-track deck, it's acceptable material and equipment to do this project. And yes, you could still make it go dunk dunk and just have it do all the 8 tracks on the recording. And yes, at one time I had some Ampex full-scale reel-to-reel tape recording heads for doing a music studio. They were damaged enough that they weren't as good as they should be, but I could have done the experiment. Again, I did a videotape deck, and I did not realize, because I didn't bother measuring the speed, that it runs slower and shittier than your standard cassette recorder. And then finally we get to the end of the video here in concept. The thickness of the tape allows you to put more tape on a reel. Using a ginormous VHS tape, plenty of room. Ostensibly, if you could just make it run at a higher speed, which it should be able to do, it's just a matter of speeding it up. You could hook up something that's on the order of a 240-minute extended play, SP tape, and run it for an hour or 2 hours of recording time, or whatever you need. Even a 120-minute tape run at double speed would be much better than quality than you'd be thinking of. Just an interesting set of things I looked up. It's just basically me dumping the information because I found out my little project I thought of doing where I would stick a bunch of 8-track tape heads because there's plenty of room in a VHS deck and not spend $200 to $500 on a single head. I found out it would have been practical. I could have done it. In fact, it's eminently doable because I've done it partially already. Almost as good as just buying a bunch of standard audio cassette recorder heads and just stacking them and then putting other heads between them. Technically, there's a 5th track in the middle you could sneak something onto if you were being entertaining about using the 8-track heads and all sorts of goofy things like that. But besides all of that, we have computers now, so it's not relevant. So I thought I'd bring this up because it was an interesting idea and project. And aside from the $100 or $200 freakishly expensive things, you also get tape heads that go for $14 to $30 in the range of Auto River's tape deck heads. Those are the ones you use stacked up to build this up. Or 8-track heads. You just look on eBay almost exclusively. No other websites have them except websites that sell parts for old 8-track tape decks, rare cassette decks, the electronic equivalent to Craigslist, and for some reason, websites that sell you high-grade audio equipment but part out damaged parts. One of the things that was doable, that I did this a little bit, was to refurbish the recording and playback heads as each other. Playback requires high quality. Recording, you can get away with lower quality, so you take the worn playback heads, resurface them, which usually you paid somebody to do it with equipment. I did the resurfacing once for a customer. And use that as a recording head because you can kind of get away with a lower quality head for it, and then put a new playback head in. By the time the recording head is turning to shit, there's nothing to recover or salvage. So this video is mostly a stub of information, links below in the description, and I've given up on doing the experiment entirely. We can do multi-track recordings with Fruity Loops or hundreds of software routines, and you can even get breakout boxes hooked up to USB or even put into your computer slots or whatever you have to work with for giving you dozens of inputs. But again, most bands, garage bands, hence the term for the software, really just had a lead and bass guitar, a vocalist, maybe a keyboard overlaying it because they would just play the song and sing, and drums. That's it. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. Bye.